Hello friends and welcome to Intense Thought. In today's video we're going to talk about the rewards of heaven and the mechanisms of those rewards. Why do there need to be rewards in heaven? Well, quite plainly because if there are no rewards in heaven then it was not worth you being alive. That is to say, if you choose to go to heaven, and going to heaven is a choice. But if there are no rewards in heaven, and quite frankly if God cannot give you joy about living, then it shows a couple things. One, God is too weak to give you joy. And two, you were better off not being alive. Because if you think about it, if there are no rewards in heaven, then everything you suffered in this life was for no purpose. Everything that everyone did wrong, that you excused or that you made the right choice, there was no purpose to it. And so there has to be a reward in heaven, because if you don't have a reward in heaven, it shows that God is too weak to provide it. And that reward can't just be any reward. It needs to be joy. You need to be joyful about living for eternity. That is the reward of heaven, that you have joy for eternity. So in this video, I wish to share with you a condensed version of what the Bible says about rewards in heaven and what we can use to apply the natural world, natural law, and all the rest to see if we can have a better understanding of what rewards there are and how this life affects that. So I'm going to give you a few short verses here and apply it with what seems to be practical. So if the Bible promises rewards for people, and those rewards, if they are different, then we can see here just a graphic example of how we consider rewards to work. Some get more and some get less. And I'll come back to this graphic in a moment. I did explain in the Principles of Esotericism video that you can see in the group that there are differences here in the outlook of all the different religions and methods of schools of thought and the risk of belief. But in this example I'm going to deal with one of the highest risk ones, which is Christianity. And I'm not talking about the threats of it, but you can go to the Principles of Esotericism video and look at that if you're interested in the threats of belief and an objective look at what the different belief systems result in. But in this, I'm going to talk about the rewards. And so this is our concept of rewards. So just like it asks here, does the Bible teach rewards in heaven? Well, let's look at this, a couple things, and we'll frame this, and hopefully I'll save you a lot of time. Not that you shouldn't read this yourself, but I'll save you some time. Hebrews 9:27 says it is appointed unto men once to die, and after this the judgment. So we live once, we die, and then there is a judgment. And it says, whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord, in this case the name of the Lord is Jesus, shall be saved. That's the English variant of his name. And it says here, this gives us an idea in Matthew 25:23 of what rewards look like in heaven. And this is really a very powerful understanding when you come to this knowledge. The Lord said unto him, well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things, and I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. And there are two things that I want to share in this verse, which is so very powerful. And it should shape your understanding, even if you are not religious or not Christian, but have a different belief system. Here is one of the great rewards promised in Christianity, joy. When you think about all the things that you have in life, what is there that is more valuable than joy? Nothing. The thing that you value most, the greatest thing in life, is joy. It is happiness and joy. Because you see, if you have joy but are in a bad situation, there is no greater possibility. If you should have joy but have all of the great things in life, but you do not have joy, you don't have anything. So it is really our interpretation of life that tells us whether it's successful or not, whether or not we have joy in life. But it says here that enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. In other words, God's joy is what we will share in. That's the promise of heaven, that we will share in the joy of the Lord. And that's most likely the greatest thing that we could share in and the greatest reward that we could possibly have, that we will be happy. Can you imagine being happy all of the time? Perhaps some of you can. I cannot at all. And I'm also, at this moment when I'm making this video, I'm not going through a happy part in life. I'm going through a very difficult time in life. So maybe that also helps me not believe that I could be joyful all the time. But there's another thing that he's giving us here, which is where it says, the Lord said unto him, well done. That's a really big reward if you think about it. If you were to be told by your Creator, good job. You were good and you were faithful. I only gave you a little bit. You've been faithful over very little, but because of that, I will make you ruler over much. And I'm going to give you joy. Joy forever. So when we turn over here to John 3:16, it says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believed in him would not perish, but have everlasting life. So living continually is also the reward. You can see in the other video, the esoteric video, I have a section where I talk about risks. But there is everlasting life that is promised, meaning the thing that we really want in life. There were two trees, And these two trees were in the book of Genesis, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And you can pursue knowledge and on and on and on and on, or you can have life. Now, between the two, if you wish to have knowledge and you lose life, knowledge is of no value to those who have no life left. Those who pass away, those who die, who have all of the knowledge in the world, it doesn't mean anything. What we need is life. So life, continuing life, is one of the rewards. Because it says that we are not going simply back to a neutral, although that is a possibility, and I explored the possibility of just turning to dust in another video. But in this example, just making the assumption that your choices are either to go up to heaven or down to hell, suffering the lover's rejection because you do not wish to be with God, then life is really what you want. So one of the promises is joy forever because you have life, and it is an acknowledgement that you have done the right thing. So all of these things came only because it says people believed that God loved the world and he gave his son Jesus to pay for the sins of those who lived. And the reason for those sins, and I explained this also in the esoteric video, is that because you had free will, it was God's fault. So all of the mistakes you make, God had to give something to pay for that, because God hates sin and he can't tolerate sin. So because he loved the world, even though the world was imperfect, he knew he made the world and he gave it the possibility of being imperfect. So he gave a way for the world, that is us, to still have that perfect relationship with God, because his son died. And that whoever believed in his son does not perish, but gets life everlasting. And the reason for that is because Jesus satisfies, for God, the irritation with our imperfection. The death of Jesus satisfies that irritation that God had, that we did the wrong thing. We were given free will and free choice, but because we made mistakes, because we did things wrong, and sometimes they weren't mistakes, sometimes they were things that were done on purpose, belief in Jesus satisfied God. And that's really what it is. It's not so much really about us in the standpoint that, oh, you've done wrong and you have to be forgiven. It has nothing to do with that. It's a different framework than people understand. It shouldn't be as hard to digest. God gave you free will, and because he gave you free will, he knew you could make a mistake. And since you did, he realized that he had to provide a way for you to be forgiven for that mistake, because it was his fault initially. So in this case, he gave his son to die, because the wages of making those mistakes, the wages of sin, was death. And so he had to have his son die to pay for the rule that he created. And so that is what allows us to be forgiven, to have that relationship with God once again. So it says here that eye has not seen and ear has not heard, neither has it entered into the heart of man the things which God has prepared for them that love him. So if you love God, your rewards are incredible, but it tells you here, you have no idea what they are. Well, if we don't know what they are, then how can we even talk about them? Well, we may not know exactly what they are, but we do know mechanisms of how we get them, and mechanisms and things about what they will be, and what they also entail. We don't know all the details, but we do know certain things about it, and two of them I have shared with you. The first being that you will know that God said, well done, you've been faithful, and he will give you joy, and he will give you life for eternity. So we move over here to Galatians, and it says, don't be deceived, God will not be mocked. Whatever man sows, that also shall he reap. Okay? And it means that the things that you do are being recorded. The things that you do are not being forgotten. When you stop at a stop sign, do you think God doesn't notice that? When you walk past someone who is in need, and they're sitting on the street and they're in need, they're clearly homeless, and you have something to give them, and you don't give it to them, and you turn your head because, oh, I don't want to give it to them, they might take it and go waste it or whatever else. That was an opportunity that wouldn't be missed. Ecclesiastes 1:9, the thing that has been is that which shall be, and there is no new thing under the sun. That doesn't mean that there are no new things, because it says in Revelation 21:5, behold, I make all things new. And so at the end, he's going to make all things new. And remember, it said that there is no new thing under the sun. So we, who look up at the sun, for us there is no new thing. And we can see that here in, for example, this Kondratiev cycle is the cycle of prosperity and decline. That even though there has been, for example, the steam engine and cotton and railways and information technology and all the rest, life has followed a same predictable cycle all throughout the generations of the world. And that the Kondratiev cycle is, here you're seeing that it's 50 years, but the cycle that we look at is slightly different. Nevertheless, each generation of us who live go through the same cycles of growth and decline, etc. And so we experience that now, but there will be a new thing. So if we turn over here to Revelation 22, he showed me a pure river of the water of life. And it says here, he's talking about heaven at the end of, this is the end of the book of the Revelation, and this is the end of our age. This is at the end of our age. It's saying that he's talking about heaven, and he saw this water of life, clear as crystal. And he says, in the midst of it, you see the tree of life again. And so the tree of life is yielding her fruit every month, and it's for the healing of the nations. And it says, there shall be no more curse. Now, what was the curse? Well, in Genesis 3:17, it says, cursed is the ground for thy sake, and in sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. So we always take in this life because of the curse. We always, when we go up, we always have to come down. We might take 2 steps forward, but we always take 1 step back. And at the end of a larger cycle, we take an even larger step back. And I've shared this in some of the other videos, but I want you to appreciate this. This is the example of the curse. But this is not what we are looking at in the future. If we turn over here to Isaiah 9:7, it says, of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end, upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom, to order it and to establish it. Now, interestingly enough, it's telling us that there shall be no curse, and then it's telling us that of God's government and peace there shall be no end. What it's telling us is that this cycle of 1 step forward, half a step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and then decline back into disappointment, where you thought you were on top of the world and now you keep coming down, this is going to go away in heaven. There will be a new song, there will be a new structure, there will be a new way that we live, and that new way will not be under this curse that you see right here. And it also says here in Revelation 21:4, that God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, because there shall be no more death, no sorrow, and no crying. There will be no more pain. Any physical pain that's experienced, it will be gone. And it says, these are the former things. It says, the former things are passed away. And I think in the next verse it says, and behold, I make all things new, which we already covered. So it says, these are the things of this life now, and they are going to pass away. In other verses, it basically tells you that you will, as just summarizing them all without showing them all and making this video overly long, there's no more sorrow. You're no longer hungry or thirsty, but you can eat and drink. You're no longer tired. You're no longer hot or cold. And that you have joy eternally. And that God did not condemn you for anything that you did. And so where's that verse? So it says here in Romans 8:1 that there is therefore now no condemnation to them which are in Christ Jesus, who walk not after the flesh but after the Spirit. Meaning those people who have set their minds to do the right thing, that believe that God will pay their sins, they're not going to be condemned for the things they do wrong. And so you are encouraged to do the right thing in life. But you're not being condemned in heaven when you believe that Jesus paid for your sins, because it's saying that he paid for them. And so he sets those sins apart. It's not you're not in heaven to be told that you've done wrong. You are there because you are there to experience joy for the things that you have done right. We don't see the purification of this, which is to say, we see the good and the bad. We see people as gray. People have good parts and bad parts. But that's not how things will be ordered in eternity. In eternity, there will be good and there will be evil. And it is a binary choice. You are on one of the sides. And the side that has chosen to be forgiven and to walk with God, that side is rewarded. And rewarded in things that are not fair. There will be things that are even better than you expect. But the side that has not wanted that relationship, they will not only be punished for what they have done, they will be punished for things. They will get the wrath of God. God will punish them even though they are undeserving of certain excess punishment, because they have lost that relationship. And I explained in the esoteric video about how when you have a relationship, a romantic relationship, for example, some romantic relationships, if they end and they end badly, you don't like that person anymore. And so if you don't like that person anymore, if you send them away, perhaps you have bad feelings towards them, and you don't want any interaction with them, and the things they have done, they all become bad. Well, that's how God would see us if we reject relationship with him. So we can see the pattern of it in this world. So let's look at the structure of actual rewards. The method for attaining it. No other foundation can man lay, which is forgiveness for sins through Jesus. That is, God made us. He gave us the ability to do the wrong thing, but he, as the master builder, made us capable of failing. And we did fail, and it was our fault, but he made us, so he has to pay for it. And that is why God himself sent his son to pay for it by dying. So that is the foundation. The foundation of this thought is that Jesus paid for your sins. But upon that, you have your actions. So now it says, if any man build upon this foundation, he puts gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, and stubble. And every man's work will be manifest. So what it means is, when we die, everything is going to be known. Every secret sentence, everything we've said, every thought, we will know everything. Everyone will know as well. And there are other things here we look at. There's even a concept in this world of something called water memory, which is to say, and it's under debate as to whether this is true or not. It's an emerging science, and science is always very critical of those things which are emerging. But the concept is that water always holds the memory of the things it has experienced. So if we are made of water, we are holding the experiences of that which we have done. And so we will not escape that memory. There's another thing that I'm going to show you, which I'm showing on the zodiac wheel, which is that we are having timed events in our life. And we're coming to that here in a minute. I've already referenced it once, but I'll come back to it shortly. So it says, every man's work shall be manifest, because it will be revealed by fire. And the fire shall try every man's work to see what it is. So if we put good things that survive the fire, good activities and good behaviors, then we do not lose. But it says, if any man's work shall be burned up. So if you put your works from life through this furnace, then the things that were not good, the things that were bad, those things are burned up, and we suffer losses of things that were promised to us, planned for us for the beginning of the world, planned for us before the beginning of the world. And they were things that we should have had, but we will lose them because we prove ourselves unworthy of those particular rewards. So we will all suffer losses. But it says even those of us who suffer losses, and even great losses, because we had belief in Jesus, we will be saved. Okay? So that means that we will still have the joy of heaven. We will still no longer be tired and thirsty and hungry and cold and have pain and sorrow and sadness. We will have joy forever. So let's look into actually how this happened. I had to give some background so this made more sense. I don't want you to think that I'm just making these things up. And even if you are not into astrology, and I'm not into astrology itself, I use things on this channel when I'm talking about financial topics that are astronomical, not astrological. But this concept here does relate to what the Bible tells us. So if we turn here to Ezekiel 21:30, it says, I will judge you in the place wherein thou wast created, in the land of thy nativity. Now, I'm not saying this is exactly going to be this example, but I'm going to show this because this is what the verse says. I will judge you in the land of thy nativity, and this is referred to as a natal chart. This natal chart, what happens is that there is a wheel within a wheel. There are two wheels here, just as the Bible also alludes to. And so the first inner wheel is a time of birth. And it has all kinds of other things. I could add other planets here and put other things here, but it just gets rather complicated. But there's all kinds of different planets in the sky. And the premise of the ancients is that where you were born, there will be events that fire off relative to your birth. This is a very simple concept to understand. If we go back to the simpler view, say, for example, in this simpler view, that the inner wheel, here is the moon, it's in Gemini, and here is the sun, it's in Capricorn, the goat, the greatest of all time, the goat. So let's take a look at how this actually works. The assumption is that this is the sun, and this is the moon, and you can see here this is the sun, and this is the moon. And so as time progresses, there are relationships to the location of the original planets, just like the Bible says, I will judge you in the land of your nativity. And so he's giving us tests throughout life. So let's just say that time passes, and all of a sudden, let's get time to pass here. Oh, there's an interaction between the moon and the sun. And on this day, at this time, you had someone be rude to you at the grocery store. How did you respond to that? Were you kind to them or not? Okay, well, that was a test, and you'll get a reward for that test. And then let's progress here. And so now, oh, here's something else that happened. You had an opportunity. You had an opportunity where you got a promotion at work. Were you kind towards people who are now your subordinates? Did you make their job easier? Did you take them for granted? Were you coarse with them for no reason? How did you treat the people around you? Okay, so let's just continue. Now, that one went away. Oh, we got another one. You have someone in your family who is sick. What do you do for them? Okay, let's continue, because this is just how life is progressing here. And this is, I'm only progressing this 1 hour at a time, by the way. Oh, there's two activities. So what happened here? Well, you were having a problem. You were trying to get a task done at your house. There's something you're trying to work on at your house. And at the same time, you had someone call you on the phone. Were you mean to them because they interrupted your activity? They needed something, but you were doing something else. So you're trying to do this, and you got interrupted by another task. So we continue this. And so you can see, here's another event. What is this event? I don't know. You were in an auto accident. Did you sue the person? Did they hurt you? No. Did you sue them because you could? Because you wanted to show them? Because what happened? This is another test. And you can see, I'm just progressing this by the hour. And you can see how many connections there are just to these original positions. And this is just the sun and the moon. Put the other planets. So the basic idea is that we are making decisions all throughout life. And because we are making decisions, if God were not God, and he were just using this concept that I'm describing here, and I'm not saying he would use this concept, I'm just saying this concept is here, we can see this in the natural world, and it gives us an understanding of what God can do. I'm not saying he will use this or needs to use this, but let's assume that if God was not God and he was just a man who understood this perfectly, could he not say, well, the blue interactions are your interactions with people, the yellow interactions are when you have financial issues, the red interactions are things that pertain to your health, etc. And so could he not go back through and just know exactly what you did? Because we can look at this ourselves and see, oh, this is a system that actually describes what the Bible is saying. And so it's telling us that there are these events of our life. Now, if we go from this, how do we get the reward? Well, let's look at this little chart here. This chart hopefully shows a number of things. Here we have 4 different people, and they're all going through life. And these 4 different people have different life experiences. You can see some of them have achieved more than others. But the scale is not compared to each other. The scale is compared to what you have done. It is compared with what you were capable of. So you are comparing what you have done with what you were capable of. So someone who has very little is expected of them. Someone who has very much is expected of them. So if we look here at Luke chapter 12, verse 48, it's interesting. It's 1, 2, 4, 8, which is a natural doubling or a sowing and reaping of the previous one. There's a mathematical pattern here. It says, for whom much is given, much shall be required. So basically, if you get much, then much is expected of you. And that's what I'm showing here in this example. Not everyone starts with the same background. Not everyone has the same advantages in life. Some people are better equipped than others. And so we have a saying, and we all know the saying, that life is not fair. For some people, it is very good, and for some people, it's not very good at all. It's terrible. And even at the bad points of life, for most of us, for our bad points, and as I said, I'm having a bad point in life right now, it's nowhere near as bad as others. There are people who have been born into places where there is despair or intense sickness or oppression or violence, things that are just terrible, that are far worse than those of us most likely who are watching this video. And our experiences here, amongst those who are watching this video, and myself included, we all have a different set of things that we were given in life and a different set of opportunities. But if you notice the colors in this chart, God does not judge us based upon how much he sees us. God does not judge us for rewards relative to what other people did. God judges us based upon our potential. In other words, think of it like a 100-question test. Let's say there's 100 questions. And I gave you an example of the questions. The questions are here every time you get these interactions between where you were born. And I don't know this is true, but it's a useful way of understanding the natural world, and we do see this in front of us, so it's possible whether it's true or not. Here, you can see if you have a 100-point test, everybody gets 100 points. So now all of a sudden, this gathering, this right here, this is a group of people, but everyone is scoring 0 to 100. So this person who has much more simply has to do much more to get all 100 questions. Let's say for this person, they're on a scale. So we see this scale from 0 to 100, but it's 0 to 100 for everyone. Some people are given more, some people are given less. Let's look down here. All of a sudden, if you were given less, if your 100% is actually only 10 questions, then what you had to do because you were offered less in life is still score the 10 questions. Someone else who was born into great prosperity or prominence, they had to do much more. So this person had 10,000 things that they could do, and you only had 10 because you had very little opportunity in life. But you also had very little opportunity to fail because you had so little opportunity. Someone else had tremendous opportunity to fail and tremendous advantages, but they're still all scored 0 to 100 because all of these are still 0 to 100. We look at other people and we say, oh, they have more, they must be better, they must be... No. God gave us an unfair existence right now, but we are simply competing with our own potential. And it is from our own potential that God will give us those rewards. But I want to say, suppose that you have fewer rewards in heaven. There is another thing about the way that God works that I find encouraging, and I want to share this. God said that of the increase of his government and peace, there would be no end. He also says that he makes all things new. And so there are no new things under the sun, but there are new things in heaven. So what we're going to see here is that there is increase. So look at this. These people all had different rewards, and they have different rewards and different experiences. So let's look at these individual rewards. This person here, you can see the blue and the gray, someone who had very few opportunities in life, maybe was physically disabled or impaired, or was born into a very disadvantageous situation or society, etc. And things really were hard on them, and they did the most what they could. And here, this was their blue bar. They did really well. Look at this next person. They had greater prosperity, and they achieved more than the first person because they had so much more given to them. But they did less well, relatively. And so this next person had great abundance, and they did even worse. And then you had someone else who was given a tremendous amount, and they did exceed. They did excel. But they didn't excel as much as the first person who had very little. So if we turn over to Luke 21:2, it says, Jesus is looking up, and he saw the rich men casting their gifts into the treasury, and they're giving their money to the temple. And he also saw a certain poor widow casting in these 2 tiny mites, which we could think of in the United States as a penny, or the smallest unit of your currency. And she had nothing, but she was giving it. And he said, of a truth I say to you, this poor widow has cast in more than all of them. Why? Because they were all casting in their abundance, but she cast in everything that she had. And that is the example here that I'm sharing with you, that it is relative to what we have that we give. And so one who has so much would have to give all of it. But one who has so little, well, it's a lot easier to give when you have very little. And so if you're sitting in a situation where things are bad, understand that it is through helping other people and responding correctly to the things that God gives us. That's not getting us to heaven. That's not making God forgive us or judge us worthy. But it is what is giving us the rewards in heaven. Because God sees that, and he says to us that the things that we do will be the result, will produce the result of the rewards that we receive for eternity. So I want to use this to encourage you to say that if you're in a bad state in life and people have hurt you and people have wronged you and opportunities have been denied to you and you see other people getting things much more easily, understand that even though this life is not fair, this life is not more than 100 years. And after this, much more time will exist. We know with certainty that there have been many generations before us, and they have lived much more than 100 years. Each of us will only live 100 years or less, which means there are many, many, many generations that went before us. And because of that, we can trust that there will be many years after we are gone from this life. And if we only spend 100 years here, maybe it's in great prosperity, and maybe it's not 100 years, maybe it's 10 years or 5 years or 50 years or whatever it is that we have left to live in life. This life is finite. And because this life is finite, wherever we are, we will be, in effect, dead much longer than we have been alive in our current reality and our current understanding of what life is. And if that does result in the life that is promised in the Bible, then we will care tremendously about the rewards that we do. Because, see, this is how God made life fair for everyone. In this world, life is not fair for each of us. Some of us have great things and some of us have terrible things. So in this world, things are not fair. But God made the world fair in the next life. Because what we are doing here is being judged, so that we know that when we stack up, let's say the order of this, I'm just looking at this chart, this person might be first, this person might be second, this person might be third, and this person might be fourth. But you see, in the current life, this person was third. And this person was first, but they fell in eternity to second. This person was third, but they fell to the very bottom in eternity. And this person was last in this life. They had a terrible life. But because through the struggles of their life, they did what they could, and they did the best that they could with what very little they had, they were first in heaven. So I hope that encourages you that the struggles of life are still a test, and you should not say, because I have so little, I should do poorly, because someone else has given so much, so they'll do well. No, if you have very little in life, do well with the very little that you have. But there is another encouraging thing that I wish to share with you. See how small this graphic has become here? And what I would like you to see is that because God is always still growing and creating and making new things, these people, let's say that this is some order that we have, how would a person who is last in heaven even be happy knowing that everybody else is better? Well, I suspect, just based upon the things that I have read in the Bible and elsewhere that are useful concepts that relate to it, I suspect that it's because things are always growing. So let's say that you are the last person in heaven. But you see how your tiny little bar is growing and growing and growing? So for a person who did well, they always remain first. For a person who did poor, they always remain last. But look at this. You have grown so much over time. So I'm just going to do it one other way. Let's say this is you in the past, and this is you after growth. It makes more sense now how, if God makes all things new, and I'm not saying that this is the exact structure, because it does say that we don't know exactly, but we can see the things that God has created in this world, and the Bible says that the creation shows the evidences of the Creator. So we turn over here to Romans 1:20, and it says the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen. Meaning, even though God hides himself, if you look at the way that the world works, you should be able to see, just by looking at how the world works, that we desire a relationship, so we should probably want a relationship with God. If we suffer the lover's rejection, we reject people. That's why there's a heaven and a hell. We have interest in what happens in the future to us, and so does God. We have interest in enjoying ourselves and consider that the good things, so does God. When we think of a person who we want to give good things to, it's someone who we like, so does God. And so all of these things, it says the invisible things. In other words, the creation, just looking around, it says here, because it may be known, let me go back to the previous verse. It says, because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God hath showed it unto them. Meaning, if you don't close your eyes to this and you look around, you realize nothing in the world mathematically is random. There is no random in this world. And if you come from a computer background or have ever played any games of chance or even trying to shuffle music, you know that nothing is random. Everything is ordered and structured in this world, and there is nothing that happened by chance. So we see the order and the structure of this world, and we see that the things that are done are by nature the deliberate things of God. So in this previous example, though we had an unfair world, the future world is sorted based upon what we could do in potentia. And here, in heaven, from the standpoint of growth, you can see here that over time, this person, even over time, and rewards increase in heaven, if we see it this way, just as an example, not that you're getting new rewards, but that your enjoyment continues and God has things planned throughout eternity. This here, you can see this person who was at the bottom exceeded everyone over time. Not that there's time, but they're exceeding this person in growth, and this person is still number one. So this person is still at the bottom, but look, they're so much happier. And we can equate this here, just in our example of this Kondratian cycle. Someone who was born here, if the only happiness in life was technological progress, we could say someone right here, well, someone previous to this, let's just say that they had basic agrarian subsistence, and then they found out that they could make mass quantities of clothing and do faster travel than on horseback. And now you get the railway and steel, and you get skyscrapers and big buildings and all kinds of other things. And now you get chemistry and drugs and plastics and other things. Now you get I don't know why they're saying automobiles in the 1950s, but 1950s you get more modern automobiles and you get chemicals and all the rest. And now in the year 1990 you have an advance in information technology and communication. So you can see this is growth here in the same way that it said about God. It said of the increase of his government there would be no end, meaning yes, the person who is last stays last, the person who is first stays first in heaven, and they earned it by what they did on earth. But because of the increase of his government and peace, there is no end in sight to the good things that happen that God has planned. So we don't know specifically what they are and what he has planned for us, but we can take comfort that there are great things promised. And we see in the example of the life in which we live, including the example that this life is so hard and unfair. And I said, and I'll say again, that I'm having a bad time in life, but I understand that perhaps God realized that if he had given me a better thing, that I might have scored worse. And so maybe he took something out of my life that I was not capable of handling. Likewise, and that's not the happiest thought, but it's very possible, that he may take things out of your life that you couldn't handle so that in eternity you get a better reward. So that's a possible thing. But I hope that you have found this encouraging, and there are a tremendous number of rewards that are promised by faith in God. So it is not all risk and loss, but just as we desire to reward people who have a relationship with us, so too does God want a relationship with us. And when we have the understanding of believing in God so that we satisfy his need for payment of sin, which is the imperfection, then because we did that, because we believed in God and chose to be his friend and chose to have that perfect relationship with him, just as you would desire a perfect relationship with your spouse or with your best friend or with your children or whomever, you desire that perfect relationship. And if you have that perfect relationship, you want to do good things for that person. And you just want to do it more and more and more. But when you have no relationship, then there's nothing good that can come from that. So I hope that you have found this both informative and encouraging, and I wish you the best.